because this deep dive is a little different. We're gonna try to see the future, like way out there, in 2032 to 2037.
Oh, wow. Future tripping already.
Haha, right. And hold on, because the source we're using, it's a Turkish blog post.
Interesting. Never a dull moment with these deep dives.
You can say that again. This blog, get this, the title is Attention, 2032-2037 World War. The world is in danger.
Okay, dramatic title. Gotta give them that.
Right, and hold on to your hats. They're using, get this, astrological calculations for all this.
Like planetary alignments, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Always found it fascinating how people connect the cosmos to life down here.
I'm with you. So basically, they're looking at where the planets and stuff are on certain dates, and they give them like a score. They call it a coefficient. High score, good vibes. Low score,
Okay, gotta admit, that's a new one for me. Definitely a creative way to look at things.
That's the beauty of these deep dives. Always something unexpected. So they jump right in with 2025. It's going to be a year of extremes. Really good, really bad, all mixed up.
Sounds kind of like every year. Just kidding.
Haha, fair point. But get this. April 16th, 2025, they're predicting a possible breakthrough in either time travel or teleportation. All because of how Neptune and Mercury are aligned.
Now that's a prediction that would change. Well, everything. Think about the possibilities, but also imagine the risks if that kind of tech got into the wrong hands.
Exactly. Talk about a game changer, right. But they don't just focus on the good stuff. 4 days later, they're saying, look out for some environmental impact. Could be because of this new tech. It's that classic genie out of the bottle situation.
Yeah, the double-edged sort of progress. Always two sides to every coin, right?
Totally. Makes you wonder if we're ready for that kind of leap. But anyway, before we go too far down that rabbit hole, the blog gets a little darker as we head into 2029, 2030.
Uh-oh. What do we have in store now?
They actually call 2029 the most dangerous year after 2019 and 2021. And this one really caught my eye. Around November 9th, 2029, they say watch out for a new virus. Could be really bad.
Okay, after the last few years, that one hits close to home for everyone, I think. Makes you wonder if we've learned our lesson.
Right. It's like, are we prepared for round 2? But hold on, because 2030 doesn't let up. April 24th, 2030, they say the sun is going to hit this super low coefficient like Medic 5. Never happened before.
Okay, that sounds ominous. What happens when the sun gets a bad score?
Not good things, my friend. They're talking shortages, famine, even the breakdown of matter itself, like something out of a sci-fi apocalypse movie.
It does make you think about how much we take for granted, like the sun just doing its thing. We're more vulnerable than we realize.
For sure, but just when you think it can't get bleaker, the blog does a complete 180. September 18th and 19th, 2031, get ready for some positive vibes.
Well, finally, some good news. What's the occasion?
They're saying Jupiter is looking really good around that time, super high coefficient, and they're predicting the birth of someone they call Mahdi, a person with, like, incredibly high morals.
Interesting. And Mahdi rings a bell. Isn't that a really important figure in Islamic theology?
You got it. Often seen as like a messianic figure, bringing peace and justice and all that good stuff.
A beacon of hope in those troubled times. I like it.
Me too. And it gets better. They're also saying there's a good chance of contact with extraterrestrial beings around then.
Whoa, hold on. Aliens, too. This just took a turn for the awesome.
Right. Peace, harmony, maybe some cool alien tech. Who knows? But buckle up, because 2032, not so much. The blog paints a pretty bleak picture of that year. They even highlight some specific dates to watch out for. July 22nd, July 28th, November 7th, and November 14th.
Okay, marking those on the calendar. What's supposed to happen then? Any specifics?
Well, they're being a little vague, which is always unnerving, right? But they're talking about a possible global crisis. Could be attacks, dangerous technology, or even, you guessed it, more extraterrestrial stuff.
It's like a cosmic game of what's next, good or bad. Sounds like we're in for a wild ride.
Tell me about it. And remember those cosmic scores, the coefficients? Well, in 2033, Neptune decides it's had enough and hits its lowest score ever, like ever, on September 25th.
Oh, that can't be good. What happens when Neptune throws a cosmic tantrum?
Brace yourself. They're linking it to a potential surge in ruthlessness and a decline in empathy worldwide. Basically, everyone gets a little more selfish.
Oof, that's a scary thought. We need more empathy, not less.
Right. And it gets kind of creepy because they even mention the Decal. It's like the opposite of the Mahdi, this figure who deceives and misleads people.
Whoa, a battle of good versus evil playing out on the world stage. Definitely some high stakes.
It's like a cosmic drama unfolding. And speaking of drama, 2034 doesn't disappoint. October 19th is another date they circled with big, red, cosmic marker. This time, it's all about technology going haywire.
Oh no. not another potential tech meltdown. What are they predicting this time?
Global blackouts, societal breakdowns, you name it. And here's the kicker, this prediction lines up with another one that's been floating around. A possible asteroid impact in October 2034.
Talk about a double whammy. Between the tech going down and asteroids crashing to Earth, 2034 is shaping up to be a year we might want to have a backup plan for.
No kidding. And the hits keep coming because the blog suggests 2036 and 2037 just continue this trend of, well, challenges. Resource shortages in 2036, which, let's be real, with everything else going on, not that surprising. But then they hit us with a potential hostile takeover by artificial intelligence in 2037.
Okay, now that's just freaky. It's like every sci-fi movie warning us about AI coming true.
It really is. So we've got a possible virus, a cosmic energy crisis, even time travel might be on the table. I gotta say, I'm fascinated and terrified all at the same time. What are your initial thoughts on all of this?
Well, one thing that strikes me is how these predictions, even though they're coming from astrology, they really tap into a lot of the anxieties people have right now. Climate change, pandemics, technology running amok, it's all there, just filtered through this cosmic lens. It's kind of fascinating.
It's like they're holding up a mirror to our collective fears, right? But it's not all doom and gloom. There's hope, too. The Mahdi, those friendly aliens, even just the possibility of people turning towards spirituality, it's like there's light at the end of the tunnel. It all comes down to choices, right?
Absolutely. And that's what we're going to unpack further in our next deep dive. We'll look at these predictions, connect them to what's happening in the world right now, and most importantly, figure out what it all means for you.
Stay tuned, folks. It's gonna be a wild ride.
It's kind of like having a roadmap, right? But instead of streets, we're following like planetary alignments and cosmic vibes.
Totally. And just like a good roadmap helps you plan your route, maybe understanding these predictions, even if we don't take them as like gospel, can help us think about the road ahead. So where do we even begin with all of this?
Well, one thing that jumps out is how these predictions, even though they're coming from astrology, they line up with a lot of what people are worried about right now. It's like the bloggers reflecting our fears and hopes back at us just through this cosmic lens.
That's a really interesting point. Like they've taken these huge, complex issues, climate change, pandemics, technology, and they're filtering it all through this astrological perspective.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's what makes these predictions so interesting. They make us look at these issues in a new way. Maybe even ask ourselves some tough questions about how prepared we are.
Like, okay, so if there's a chance of another pandemic in 2029, am I doing everything I can to be ready? Or if the blog is right about resource shortages in 2036, should I be living more sustainably?
Right. It's not about saying these predictions are definitely going to happen, but using them to think about our own lives and what we can do. It's about taking control of the future, even if we can't know for sure what it holds.
And that actually brings us to another interesting thing about the blog, the focus on individual choice and action. Because even with all this talk about cosmic forces and planetary influence, the blogger keeps saying, we're not just puppets controlled by the stars.
Right. Our choices matter.
Yeah.
We have free will.
Exactly. It would be easy to just say, oh, well, if the stars say it's going to happen, there's nothing I can do. But the blog is pushing back against that. It's saying we have agency even in the face of uncertainty.
It's like they're saying, okay, here's a glimpse of what could be. But now it's up to you. You can either freak out or you can use this information to make better choices.
It's about taking ownership. It's about action.
Yeah.
So if this Turkish blogger is onto something, and the next few decades are going to be a mix of tough times and amazing opportunities, what are some of the key takeaways from all this? What should people be thinking about?
Well, I think the biggest one is awareness. Just paying attention to what's going on in the world around us. Being informed about the things that are shaping our future, whether it's climate change technology or social and political changes, we need to be engaged.
So don't just scroll past those headlines. Actually take the time to learn about this stuff, figure out where you stand.
Exactly. And beyond just knowing about it, it's about taking action. The blog is saying, don't wait for someone else to fix things. Get involved. Find ways to make a difference in your own life and in your community.
It's about those small everyday choices we make that when enough people do them, they can actually make a real difference. Whether it's being more eco-friendly, supporting businesses that align with your values, or just being kinder to each other, every little thing counts.
For sure. And that actually ties into another takeaway, the importance of community. We can't solve these big problems alone. We need to work together, support each other, and find common ground.
Collaboration over competition, right? Because at the end of the day, we're all in this together.
100%. And lastly, I think the blog reminds us that even with all the doom and gloom, there's still room for hope. There's potential for incredible things to happen, breakthroughs in technology, a renewed focus on spirituality, maybe even contact with other intelligent life out there.
It's like they're saying, yeah, the future's uncertain, but it doesn't have to be all bad. It's up to us to create the future we want to see.
It's a powerful message, and I think it's something we can all hold on to.
Absolutely. Now, you mentioned earlier that the blog goes beyond just these global trends and actually looks at how these astrological influences might play out in specific countries, organizations, even political parties. Do you want to give us a sneak peek at what the stars have in store for some of these key players?
Sure. Let's start with a country that's been in the news a lot lately, the United States. According to the blog, the U.S. might be facing some internal conflicts and challenges to its global leadership, especially in 2025 and 2027.
So, some potential bumps in the road for the U.S. Not exactly a shock given the current political landscape. What about Russia? They've been making their presence known on the world stage as well. What's in the cards for them?
Well, the blog predicts that Russia is going to continue to assert itself, potentially leading to more tension and maybe even conflict, particularly around August 2025 and November 2032.
Which, considering what's happening in the world right now, is definitely something to keep an eye on. Okay, what about China? They're a major player on the world stage, and their influence just keeps growing. What does the blog have to say about their future?
The blog suggests that China will probably continue to grow economically and politically, but it also points to possible internal issues and challenges, especially in 2027 and 2032. Interestingly, there's also a prediction that China might get caught up in some sort of alliance or power struggle with North Korea and Japan in the early 2030s.
It sounds like China's got both opportunities and potential problems ahead of them. And it seems like no one is immune to these cosmic ups and downs. But these are just a few examples. The blog also makes predictions about organizations like NATO and the European Union terrorist groups, even specific political parties.
It's like this big global tapestry, right, with all these threads connected and influenced by the stars.
It's definitely a lot to process, but it's also incredibly fascinating to think that these celestial bodies millions of miles away might actually be influencing things here on Earth.
It definitely makes you question everything we think we know about cause and effect.
Yeah.
And it raises so many questions, like how much of our future is already decided, and how much control do we really have? Is there such a thing as fate, or are we in charge of our own destiny?
Those are some big questions, right? Questions that people have been wrestling with for centuries. And it seems like this Turkish blog post has just added more fuel to the fire. But before we get too philosophical, I'm really curious about those specific dates that the blog keeps mentioning. You talked about a few of them earlier, 2029 with the potential pandemic, 2030 with the cosmic energy crisis, and of course the whole asteroid impact prediction in 2034. Are there any other dates we should be marking on our calendars?
Oh yeah, definitely. Like they went through and were like, these are the dates to watch out for. And some of them were pretty wild, even if you're trying to be like, okay, let's not get too carried away.
Well, don't leave us hanging. Give us the rundown. What other dates did they flag?
All right, so beyond those big ones, they point to August 6th and 7th, 2025 as like high tension days. And they even get specific, talking about Ukraine, Syria, Turkey, and Iran as potential hotspots then.
Given everything going on in those places, it's not hard to imagine things bubbling over then. It's like even with these big predictions about the future, we got to remember there are real conflicts happening right now.
Exactly. It's easy to get caught up in the big picture, but these real-world situations matter too. And speaking of real world, they also highlight October 8th, 2027. They're linking that to possible food shortages globally and economic turmoil.
Okay, so first, a pandemic, now food shortages. I'm starting to think that emergency kit isn't such a bad idea. But seriously, it really shows you how interconnected everything is and how fragile things can be.
For sure. One crisis can trigger another, and then it's like a domino effect around the world.
Makes you think about all the systems we rely on, right?
Yeah.
Food supply chains, trade, even just countries working together. What happens when that breaks down?
Exactly. It highlights how important it is to be adaptable, resilient, and most importantly, willing to cooperate to solve these problems.
Right. It's not the time for every man for himself. When it comes to something like food, we've got to work together.
100%. Now, it's not all doom and gloom on the cosmic calendar. They do have some really interesting predictions for the late 2030s, too. For example, around September 18th and 19th, 2031, those same dates with all the good vibes, they're saying there could be huge breakthroughs in communication and transportation tech. Maybe even contact with aliens?
Okay, now that's a prediction I can get behind. Forget flying cars. We're talking spaceships. But really, can you imagine what that would mean for humanity if we actually made contact with another intelligent species? It would change everything.
It's mind-blowing, right?
Right.
It speaks to that part of us that wants to explore, to connect, to understand where we fit in the grand scheme of things.
It's like we're hardwired for that sense of wonder. And who knows, maybe those breakthroughs aren't as far off as we think. After all, look at how much technology has changed even in our lifetime.
That's true. We went from those giant computers to smartphones, from dial-up to blazing fast internet. It's only speeding up from here.
So maybe, just maybe, interstellar travel isn't just science fiction. But even if we're not cruising around the galaxy anytime soon, the blog says the late 2030s are going to be a time of huge transformation here on Earth.
Yeah, they're predicting big social and cultural shifts during that time. Like our values and the institutions we've always relied on are going to be challenged by new ways of thinking and new ways of life.
It's like growing pains, but on a global scale, right? With all the technology, the environmental challenges, the changes in society, it's forcing us to rethink everything.
Exactly. And the blog specifically mentions a potential rise in spirituality during this time. Like people searching for meaning and connection in a world that feels kind of crazy and uncertain.
It's like we need something to hold on to, something bigger than ourselves.
Yeah.
Especially when things feel so chaotic.
Exactly. And this spiritual shift might not just be on a personal level either. The blog hints at a broader change towards more ethical and sustainable living.
It's like what goes around comes around.
Right.
Maybe after focusing so much on consuming and individualism, we're going to swing back towards compassion, cooperation, taking care of each other and the planet.
It's a hopeful thought, right? That even with all these challenges, we might come out of it stronger and more connected.
It really is. But as we've seen throughout this deep dive, the future isn't set in stone. We all have a role to play in shaping what's to come.
Exactly. Our choices today, how we live, how we treat each other, how we treat the planet, it all adds up to create the future.
So we might not be able to predict the future with perfect accuracy, but we can influence it. And that's both incredibly powerful and a little bit scary.
Definitely. But it's also exciting. It means we're not just along for the ride. We get to create the future we want to see.
I love that. And on that note, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive.
We covered a lot of ground, from pandemics and asteroids to time travel and aliens. What a ride.
It really was. But beyond the specific predictions, I think the most important thing is that we're asking these big questions, challenging our assumptions, and thinking about how we can make better choices today for a better tomorrow. So, to everyone listening, thank you for coming along on this wild ride with us. We hope you enjoy this deep dive and that it gave you a new way of thinking of the future. And remember, the future isn't something that just happens to us. It's something we create together, one choice at a time.